Right, there's one with her and the acting commissioner, and that one came out really bad.
So, yeah.
She's like, oh, we look good. I'm like, you know, like, you might look good, but some actually was that good picture.
So I just you can click that. It's still around.
We close it out. Oh, okay. Okay. And then, yeah, I think that's it.
I barely post anymore.
That's it.
Yeah, she did, because I will check.
We got 4 comments.
Yeah, 4 comments. Yeah, and I'll show it on the ending slide. It will just say like whether it's in support or not. I didn't like directly screenshot it, but
Right? Yeah, we're not.
Okay, since we. I don't say you have to read my six. So, to order the meeting of the engineering board of appeals. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Moving to that. Can't be clear together. We only have one key, but the applicant is here. And so for application AV number 042, the address 189 Steadles, which is outside and merged only is in a residential small family density zoning district. The proposal is construction of an additional 8-foot fence in the rear yard of the residential property. With that, and you said there's no one signed up to speak, so process is usually the applicant comes up. If there's anyone needs to speak afterwards, they can then speak. After we have exchange with you, we can ask questions, or we can do your presentation, you can ask questions. Then if there was anyone who's here, wanted to speak, they could speak, and then you get an opportunity to respond. Currently, we have no one in the room and no one signed up to speak, online. Because now everything is as well online. So, shall we stay right here? Yeah.
Thanks, Eric. Well, my name is Eric Tolman, and it's my wife, Christine. We're co-owners of the property. And basically, we're here today on a safety issue. Our neighbors behind us raised their property and built a retaining wall. And in doing so, they built it very close to our property line and our existing 6-foot fence. And in doing so, it made it easy to encroach on our property. We have a in-ground swimming pool, and there is a code, housing code 231-91J, that states that if you have an in-ground swimming pool, that's on page 20. All swimming pools shall be effectively fenced by an artificial enclosure not less than 6 feet in height So we feel that the fence, 6-foot fence that had surrounded the pool before is now been reduced because of that retaining wall, and the property was elevated 2 or 3 feet. So we feel that our 6-foot fence is now effectively 4 feet. That's why we're asking for it to be raised to 8 feet.
No, I trust everybody had an opportunity to look through the pictures in the slideshow. And, you know, ultimately we're here because we have neighbors in the back now who have young children. There's a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And they're all boys, and we raised a boy, and boys will be boys. And they, you know, God forbid something happened where they, you know, put some type of board or something from their retaining wall to our yard, and then unsupervised land themselves in our in-ground pool, which is a huge liability for us. We've lived in this house for 24 years. We've never had an issue because there was no elevation of the property in the rear up until last September, I think is when that all happened. So again, we're here, you know, sort of for the safety and security of the neighborhood, for the safety and security and liability of ourselves being property owners here. So I think that, as you can see, it's just the one fence in the back of the yard. What you don't see is behind the fence in this view, obviously, because there's you know, our property line. Our property line has been filled. The 2 feet between the property and the neighbor's property has about a 12-inch layer of gravel, and then the retaining wall at 33 inches is behind that. So again, you can see that here.
14. You can see where that's 33 inches at the top of the fence on the right, the existing fence. It's almost touching it. We feel that it could pose a problem and a risk of a young life or even an older life to encroach the fence and possibly die.
But ultimately, it doesn't adhere to the code, right? I mean, that's ultimately the situation here is that the city housing code requires us to have a 6-foot fence. And clearly, you know, based on that elevation, we don't.
You can see on slide 13, that is a view behind the fence, and you can see where the property line is raised to. Now, what you can't see is before this, and I have Amanda. Amanda, I forgot to give these pictures out, but I can pass.
Oh, you could pass it around. Yeah.
This is a scene before the elevation. And basically, the property was sloped gradually, and the neighbor raised it. And again, that's where you see this bar. That's the after, and this is the before.
Thank you.
Well, you can see it was raised very, very high. And before we had no issue, and now we have an issue. That's what brings us here today. One other point too, the streets between Lenox and Homesdale, the geography is very unusual. In some points, the streets borders, and that's the border between our 2 streets. Here is our next door neighbor, and they also have a swimming pool on 246 Lenox,
Which is the house beyond the fence.
and you can see on the right hand side there's a 6-foot fence, and then you can see the elevated or the 8-foot fence to the left behind the tree. They have also again a swimming pool, so I'm assuming they also want to provide safety to their family and ultimately the families around.
And so we believe that that sets a precedent that you know, should be looked at in relationship to our application, because like my husband said, the topography of the land in between these two streets is very unusual. It's not an even grade. Across the-
Anyone have any questions?
Not right now. Next, get the presentation of all the materials. Do you want to walk us through that?
Yeah, walk us through. I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
Do you want to walk through the criteria?
Yeah, like their answers to the criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for character, can you speak to character of the neighborhood and how it wouldn't produce an undesirable change? I know you have your answer here. We just need you to go through each one of the criteria for an area variance.
Sure. So we don't believe that this will create an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. Number one, it's a backyard. Number two, as I've mentioned previously, the precedent has been set here. We would be putting in a proposal is to put in a vinyl fence that has that similar sort of look as a pressure treated wood fence would. So, and again, our proposal is to put the fence in between our existing chain link fence and the landscaping that we have. So again, it's not going to be a wall that stands out. It's going to be something that's integrated into the landscape that we've already built in our garden. So we don't believe that there's any sort of hindrance here to changing the character of the neighborhood, because we're not taking down trees, we're not, uprooting things. We're sort of trying to integrate the solution into the neighborhood. And most of our neighbors have, lush backyards. I mean, this is an established neighborhood in the city. So again, we believe this does not make an undesirable change to the.
And is it visible from anywhere than your property, the neighbor's property? Okay.
From the front of our house, no. From the back of our house, obviously, it's gonna bump right up against our neighbors.
Yes, only you and the neighbor could see that. Yeah. Not visible from the street.
No.
We could go through alternatives that you considered during this process.
Well, there really isn't an alternative to having a 6-foot fence height unless you have a 6-foot fence height or more in this situation. Obviously you could say.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but she's referring to the ordinance housing code 231-91J. There is really no other alternative. So we and I think the key word is the height. If the property behind us is raised, it's an easy encroachment. Kids can get over the fence. It could happen, and so this is the only way we believe that it can effectively be done to keep it close.
And then substantiality. Do you think this is a substantial deviation from the code when you went through the area variance?
If you look at the neighbor's house, no, and I'm sure there are other houses in Albany that have 8-foot fences and for other obvious reasons, but this is the fact that it's a swimming pool. I don't think it varies much.
From the requirement of having a 6-foot fence, right? Taking all things into consideration. The peculiarity of the neighborhood, peculiarity of the topography. I don't think it varies much from the 6-foot requirement that is part of the USDO.
And then it looks like here you said the variance does not have an impact on the environment. Is that correct? Okay. And then for self-created difficulty, like you said, the request for a variance is not self-created.
Right, because like we said, we've lived in the house for 24 years and never had an issue with the fact that our 6-foot fence is not adequate to protect anyone from the pool, and also keep in mind the safety.
Thank you. Just for the board to consider, there were 4 public comments from surrounding neighbors. All 4 of them were in support. The names and addresses are listed here.
There are privacy issue as well. Our neighbors in the regard. With a lot more easy to schedule than.
Like we can be in our kitchen and we can look out and we can see them walking across the yard. So, it's just tempting, you see it and go, well, on an 85 per day, it's very tempting.
Just that they're just kids, So our fear is that they see it and wait until we're not home or at night and, so that's a big fear.
And the price, I think you just explained that was, that became a new thing, that.
Absolutely. I mean, the picture that there, I mean, you can see prior to any of this going on, there was a wall of foliage that, not only was the 6-foot fence, a true 6-foot fence, but the backyard neighbor was just a wall of foliage. It's probably 4 feet deep. So we never saw anything that was transpiring in their backyard. They never saw anything that was
Again, it's not an issue with privacy. We could put arborvitaes there, and which we think we will, even if we grant us the permission to build an 8-foot fence. But again, it's the ease of the entry. All the kid would need to do is place the word in that retaining wall over. You can see it. I think it was page 14. So it would be easy for a kid to get in. So yeah, if you put a board right from the wall over, or like some kids are daring enough, they jump, a little over, whatever, but it's just too close.
I'm just curious, do you have any idea why the neighbors raised the fee that way?
No.
I see that it's sloped. I mean,
It was graded before. It was just sort of, it's sloped over. I would like a 65-degree angle.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a sizable yard, even without putting retaining wall in. So we have this.
Oh, it's, I don't know, did you know, or did you talk to the neighbors on that side? Do they have any, do they know of this application? If they have started their issues?
We assume they know of the application because I'm sure they do discover that it's our neighbors did. And it's not like we haven't had conversations with them in the past. In fact, I believe there's a slide in here that you can see the retaining wall here. Now note the date, that's August 2022. I think the next slide, that's the next slide too. Okay, that is the same view of April 2023. So in between that time, the retaining wall was there, the retaining wall went down, the retaining wall was supposed to go back up. So there's a lot of things going on in that space that we're not privy to. We were told that they were going to have a retaining wall go back up, but no, we don't know.
You look, if I could bring your attention, slide 17. This is a view of the neighbors, and I believe it's Bernie.
242 Lennox, that's right.
Our neighbor, his name is Bernie Huss. So that, and then again, bring your attention to this one. You can see how high it is up. So if anything, I think he's faced with, although he doesn't have a swing, but he's faced with a similar situation. All of a sudden, one day you have a very graded backyard property, and the next day it's raised dramatically.
go back to the photo that shows the retaining wall space.
This one? Okay, you're welcome.
I just want to clarify, so when you just said the retaining wall is gone right now, the yard from your neighbors in the back is still a little bit raised over what it used to be. It's not sloped anymore, so even though the retaining wall is gone, the
blocks are not gone.
Yeah.
The blocks are stacked up in the yard. And I think there was like a major disagreement between the contractor and I think that the retaining wall did not actually comply to the property lines. So Bernie Huss, the neighbor on at 242, which would be at this side, his property was actually sort of encroached upon, and the retaining wall was on his property. So there was I guess there was an issue between those two neighbors. And so the contractor was taken to small claims court, and all of a sudden the blocks come down and they're stacked up. As you can see in that other photo, they're stacked up throughout the yard. And so you can see that here.
Oh, maybe the next one. Yeah, there. So we can make here, we can still see that even though the blocks may be gone, there's still that like difference, I guess, behind like from the yard of the neighbor, like your yard, right? Level. So just, for clarity purposes, and maybe better, I guess this one. So your fence is still 6 feet, so technically it still complies with code, but like compared to your yard level, right? But I understand what you're saying, that like from your backyard neighbor's perspective, it's not 6 feet in.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that the risk is, as a homeowner and insurance wise, the risk is someone dies in the pool. So, that's the big issue to us. And I work with insurance for a living, and it's as a homeowner, it's scary too. We have it's our responsibility to protect our neighbors, and we take it very seriously. So we're here because the neighbor raised his property, and that's the only reason why we're here. We lived there for 24 years and never thought of raising or increasing that fence. But suddenly we find ourselves in this risky situation. And who knows if it'll happen, but accidents happen. And so that's our big fear. That's why we're here.
So the 33 inches of debris that's shown on the screen right now, so is that there all of the time? So there's
That
not.
was the retaining wall was masking that. So once the blocks come away,
Okay.
that's what's there.
So there would be a natural difference in the backyard elevation.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because I guess the slope got dug out, changed it, and like a retaining wall. Sort of the slopes.
So if you imagine, the bottom baseline of our fence has about 8 inches of fill on their side. So we can see, in fact, our fence has taken on some damage because of all of that weight of that fill has been pushing against the fence.
You can see that on the right hand side against the green fence. That's the fill that my wife was talking about. They raised that about a foot. So if you maybe we can view it from the back side of the slide. There was a slide that showed from our side viewing over there, you saw the height of the fill.
Okay. One more thing. There you go.
That's like a new plateau.
Yeah, can you see that? Yeah, you can kind of see it right on by the telephone pole to the left of the telephone pole. No, slide 13, please. Those are a little bit better. See about where it says ground line at 189 Holmesdale. There's about a foot of fill on that very bottom. And so that is what's pushing our fence in. It's actually bowed a couple of posts, metal posts. It's bowed them. The other fear we have is to, by putting another fence up, we'll make it stronger. And as the ground freezes and thaws and everything, I think that's when more damage could happen. Because, and I didn't bring a slider, but the posts are actually bending over. If they were pushed by that bill. So that's the other concern is, hey, if we build another fence on top of that, that's going to add strength to it.
Okay. So, I don't have any other questions. Any motions?
I was going to make a motion that we, recognizing that every variance 142 would not be a detriment to the character of the neighborhood, where applicant has obviously described some alternatives considered. Even if this wasn't a safety matter, they also identified some things they consider to enhance privacy, but since the principal focus, I think, of this application is safety, whereas there are no real alternatives to safety with city code. And I do not see that there's an impact on the environment, and this is again not a self-created difficulty. It's the consequence of decisions made by adjacent property owners. I make a motion that we grant area variance 142 to allow for an 8-foot tall rear yard fence where the maximum permitted is 6 feet.
Second. So we're going to do yes, start doing roll call votes. So Marta.
Yeah.
On page.
Yes.
Yes. Facebook, yes. That's unanimous. So that grants the variance allowing you to create a equal your fence. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I just remember here, it's kind of in the flow. Did you have anything to say?
No, I'm just gonna say congratulations.
Okay. Thank you.
This is Alex from our department downstairs.
Okay.
We had to make a motion to adjourn, right?
Okay, yes.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Serena?
Yeah. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.